Hey everybody, how's everybody doing this morning? Welcome to my Sunday live stream where we talk about photography and catch up on what's new this week, if anything. And I always like to talk about what I've been up to and see how everybody else is doing. I hope everyone's doing well, and I appreciate, as always, you taking time out of your day and spending a little time here with me at home. Something's wrong with my live streaming today. I can't get the chat window to pop up in the video. I can still see the chat on my other screen here, but I'll show you. Ooh, wow, that's rough. But yeah, I got the chat window right here, and then I got the streaming window here. I need to fix this. I don't know. I think there was an update or something that OBS did, because I did update this recently, but I don't know if it was since the last stream. So so I've been struggling with it all week trying to get it right, but I still can't get the chat window to show up. So I'm just going to be full screen, headshot and all. I might be able to fix this one issue though. Let's see, there is filters. No. I don't know why. But anyway, yeah, this set is actually from Doctor Who. And it I think it was the episode with Eldrad, I don't know, some creature that was like a silicon-based life form and went back to his planet and found out that they were all gone and he couldn't rebuild anything. But yeah, I'm a big Doctor Who fan. But anyhow, let me see who's here. I'm always excited to see who's come in. Let's see, Plato, Marcia, awesome. Good morning. Christine M, Scott Mumford, Lysippus, and Serge. Always good to see you. John Follows, Scott Mumford, Jim Jones, Dave Nelson, Soft Fun, and thank you for the coffee this morning. And Thomas Zazauskas, and Jim Jones, thank you. Yes, I'm awake. I'm just struggling with these technical issues. I don't know. It was just a weird update that they did, and now I got this like this doesn't make any sense to me. Why the green screen is all jacked up. So and let's see, John Truman, hello. And Walter, oh my goodness, hey Walter, how are you? Good to see you. And let's see, looks like we're manning Michi. Yes, Virgin oh, that's right. I'm gonna miss that in about, that's supposed to happen in about 20 minutes, I think. And you prefer this to seeing the chat in the sidebar. When we play back the video, the YouTube includes the chat. Okay, there is a reason specifically why I do that. Because sometimes I have to edit the video, the live stream, after the fact. So when I do that, like last week, I had to clip out about 10 seconds. I had to clip 10 seconds out of me showing my teeth. And you know how vain I am, right? I don't want people having a close-up of my teeth, because it was like a picture of my teeth like right here. So I clipped that out. So when people play the live stream back, they don't see that. And when I do that editing, and I have to do it in YouTube because I can't download and re-upload, when I do that, the chat window is disabled and you can no longer see the chat window on playback. Also, people that are watching on their tablets or phones, it's very distracting to have the chat overlay the top of me. And if you're trying to watch the chat and no overlay, is too small. to read. So I put it on the side over here normally so that you can play back full screen and see the chat at the same time without it overlaying on the top. Now, people watching on a computer, it's fine, right? But yeah, there's some overlay issues. There's the editing issues. And also, when I download the live streams after they're over, I like to watch them. I don't necessarily watch them on, a lot of times I watch it on my TV. And I can't see the chat unless it's right here. So, and I always like to read the chat, because I miss so many chat questions sometimes and comments that are great. I try to make a note and try to answer the questions maybe in the next stream, or I just like seeing people's comments. Some of them are really funny, some of them are very educational, and it allows me to watch the chat after the stream, download it on my computer rather than having to play it back live on my computer in here, because I can scroll very quickly if it's downloaded to my computer back and forth. Whereas, on YouTube, it's very awkward, right? So there's a lot of reasons I do that to have it this way. But anyway, and Mike Ham, hello, says, good morning. Quick question to start the day. I'm going to the Boundary Waters for a week of camping. Okay. Should be great skies. I have the 7 to 14. Think I should buy the 8 to 25. I have the 12 to 40. Now, don't buy the 8 to 25. If you have a 7 to 14 and a 12 to 40, I don't see any reason to get an 8 to 25, because landscapes, typically you're going to do two different ways, right? You're going to do the wide angle shot, like 7 to 14 millimeters, or you're going to do a zoomed in shot, like at 40 millimeters. 25 is not quite there, right? It's a nice normal length, but you have that on the 12 to 40. And honestly, I think you could get by with just a 12 to 40. And, like I do many times when I go out and do landscapes, I do panos. I just tilt my camera sideways and I rotate it, so I can capture 4, 5, 6 images. Then I stitch them back together in post-processing. And I'll get a much wider shot and much more detail than I ever would with a single, say, 7 millimeter shot, which would be 20 megapixels. So it's a little more work, but you get many times better results, right? So, I'd say you could even get away with just a 12 to 40, because I know it's a pain sometimes to swap lenses in the field, but I don't see any advantage of having an 8 to 25 in your situation. For me, I would get the 8 to 25 mainly for my professional work, because that's the perfect focal length for doing commercial real estate type photography, the perfect range. And even the 7 to 14 would be a good range, but that lens is a couple hundred grams more in weight, so that's why I don't need an f2.8. The problem I have with the 8 to 25 is I think it's priced about right. I just wish it was a couple $100 cheaper. Because when I looked at the Panasonic 8 to 18, which is an f2.8 to f4 variable aperture, it's not quite long enough on the long end. 18 is still a little bit too wide, because sometimes I have to switch over to my kit lens and zoom in for some more close-up type shots when I do my photography. But an 8 to 25 would get me there close enough, and I'll just crop in a little bit. But if I have to crop in on an 18 millimeter image, sometimes it's not ideal. And I think that lens is actually 100 grams more. No, it's 100 grams less. The 8 to 18 is 100 grams less than the Panasonic. If I remember, the 8 to 18 Panasonic is 100 grams less than the 8 to 25, if I remember correctly. So that was very attractive. I'm still thinking about that lens versus the Olympus 8 to 25, but that extra reach. But yeah, to answer your questions, no, you don't need to buy the 8 to 25, for just that kind of thing. Um, I would just, yeah, for camping. I mean, it's a great lens, but I wouldn't buy it just for that one trip. Now, if you're doing those kind of trips all the time, then I would strongly consider getting it, because that 8 to 25 range is pretty awesome. It's not 40, right? Like the 12 to 40, but that's a pretty awesome range. Uh, but for me personally, I probably wouldn't buy the 8 to 25 for camping. I would just stick with the 12 to 40 and then do panos, right? Um, that because I get better results with panos anyway, better than I ever would with a single 8mm shot. So that's and I don't have to change lenses, right? Because I have effectively as wide as I want, because I can pano 180 degrees if I want, or 360 if I want, right? With a 12 to 40. But yeah, it's not worth it. And that's why I think the 8 to 25 is going to be a tough sell overall. Because they're just there are situations, obviously, that 8mm, having it that wide uh, for a single shot is the only way you're going to get the shot, right? Um, if there's any kind of movement in the shot, then major movement. I'm not talking about like the trees and the wind blowing. I'm talking about like sheep or people, something else in the shot that has to be frozen when you take the picture, and you want to capture that wide angle. Then yeah, the only way to get there is with a single shot. But like I said, you have the 7 to 14, so I'm not helping at all, right? I'm giving you too many reasons to go either way. uh, but yeah, I'm perfectly content with the 12 to 40 for hiking, because I do panos, right? An 8 to 25, I wouldn't buy an 8 to 25 personally to do wide shots, just for hiking and camping. Okay. Let me scroll up a little bit. Soft Fun says, newbie flash question. Just got the TT350 for the M1 Mark III. Had expected to be able to select manual, but I only have fill-in red eye off or slow available. Just use fill-in. Yeah. Use fill-in, and that will fire the flash every time. And it'll work for manual and TTL. So if you're in TTL mode on the Godox TT350, it'll do TTL and expose everything properly. If you are in full manual, then obviously you can control the flash in manual. But the main thing with fill-in is to just fire the flash. You don't want to use red eye. And slow is a different thing, right? It fires, I think that's the delay. I never use that personally, but I think that's when it fires at the end of the exposure or the beginning of the exposure. One or the other, I can't remember which. But yeah, I get the same thing when I use mine. Let me see, TT350 M1 Mark III. Let me just put my flash on and double check. I got a couple of photo jobs this week that I need to get ready for. Batteries. I normally use a trigger, so when I put the trigger on, I recall it was always fill also. Okay, power on. Power on. Oh, camera needs a battery. So off. Go in aperture. Oh, man. So I'm on TTL radio slave mode. Let me get this off slave, put this on master. This channel. Okay. Man, I am rusty using the flash directly. I'm always using a trigger now. Why isn't this switching modes? There we go. Master. All right. Get out of silent shutter. Fill in, red eye, off, slow, slow, slow. Yeah. Yeah, mine is the same. I just use fill in and you'll be fine. But I just wanted to double check. Let's see. Oh, Jim, how are you? Or JM from Portugal. Awesome. Peter Beeks, good to see you from Thailand. And Randy, oh my goodness, how are you, Randy? And Dave Nelson is asking, any recommendations on YouTube video on how to use Photolab 4? Ooh, no, I haven't watched any that are I haven't watched any. I've just been using it. It's similar enough to everything else that I haven't needed a tutorial yet. But I'm going to do a review on Photolab 4 later this week. I mean, if I don't go out shooting today, I guess I could make one on just a short review to show you all the different features. But a full-on tutorial, no, I don't know of any offhand. I mean, Photolab 4 has great tutorials on their website. And if you open up Photolab 4, there's a help section which will take you to the tutorials. And I think I only watched one of those to try to figure out if you can import photos directly, but you cannot. And that was it. But I haven't needed it for anything else. But oh my God, I love Photolab 4. I am just so impressed with the results that I'm getting. And I'm going back to some older photos that I've taken before and redoing them. And it's really doing so much. It's doing a much better job than I could ever do with just Lightroom by itself. In two respects. One, the noise reduction with the deep prime, massive difference. And then the optical corrections and sharpening, are just amazing. So when you combine deep prime with the sharpening tool, man, I just cannot believe my eyes, the difference in the results that I can get with Photolab 4 versus using Lightroom. And there are a lot of techniques that will probably get you there with Lightroom and Photoshop, where it'll match what Photolab 4 can do. But this is what I like about Photolab 4 is, it's a couple clicks of a button and a quick slider, and the results are amazing. So yeah, I just there was a few bugs when I started, but there's been a few updates, or there's been one update to Photolab 4 and an update in Windows, and the problem has not come back. Where I was not losing, but I was missing files in Photolab 4, but they were in my folder, but they were missing. But now I have not run into that issue since. And I've been trying to duplicate that issue, and it just has not happened yet. But I'll mention that in my review, that you need to be very conscious of, the files, compare them between what Photolab 4 is showing you and what you see in your file manager. So file manager might say 300 images, but then you go to Photolab 4 and it might say 0, it might say 100, but it's not going to match. But that problem has disappeared. And that's what worries me, is things that go away for no reason sometimes just come back for no reason. And if they went away because of these updates, then I'm happy. If they went away on their own for no reason and had nothing to do with these updates, then I'm a little concerned, because the updates, if you look at the fine print on the updates, they don't talk about, solving this particular issue that I was having. And they have the one line generic, fixed minor bugs. What does that mean, right? I mean, minor to them might be huge to me, right? Like this one problem I was having. So I don't know if it was addressed directly or not. I did send a support ticket in. They got back to me in 2 or 3 days saying that, the problem you're having has come up on very specific machines. So they're saying it's machine specific, and they said a Windows update might fix it. And lo and behold, there was a Windows update. I mean, there's Windows updates every day, it feels like. But so I've been doing the updates regularly, and this problem has not reoccurred for me. So still at this point, I strongly recommend Photolab 4, the elite version, and I would mildly recommend you go full on, get the film packs and the perspective correction with it for because it's $200 for Photolab 4 Elite, which includes the deep prime, and it's $270 to get the whole thing, right? Photolab film pack, the deluxe or whatever they call it, and the perspective thing. The perspective thing is pretty awesome too. It really takes shots that for me, right? Because a lot of times I'm taking shots at different angles and things, and I need to fix the perspective, and it does a good job. I would say it's equivalent to the Lightroom perspective control overall. Sometimes Lightroom does a better job with the auto correction. Sometimes Photolab 4 with perspective does a better job. Because perspective is when it tries to correct perspective automatically, it's looking at lines and angles and then trying to figure out what works. So there's some algorithm. So some images, the algorithm is better in Lightroom. Some images, the algorithm's better in Photolab 4. Now, Photolab 4, the two main improvements I would want to get is being able to import directly into Photolab 4. Right now, I use Lightroom, but I did a couple of test runs. I used Faststone to import the images, and that worked fine. And then, the other thing being able to do HDR and focus stacking and things like that. It doesn't have that ability to do HDR, focus stacking, panoramas. So a nice complement to Photolab 4 Elite is Affinity Photo, which does all of those things amazingly for the money. So it's a pretty hefty investment, right? Overall, you're talking $270 for Photolab 4 Elite, and then another $25 to $50 for the Affinity, depending if it's on sale or not. And then Faststone is free. So the workflow would be you import your images using Faststone, you edit your images using Photolab 4 Elite, and if you have panoramas and focus stacking and HDR, you would use Affinity Photo first and then go back and edit in, well, you could do it both ways. Sometimes I like to edit in Photolab 4 before exporting to Affinity to do the processing. So there's a workflow that you need to do, but all of that combined is the workflow still not as good as Lightroom Photoshop photography package bundle. For my professional work, I cannot duplicate the workflow, the very smooth workflow that I have in Lightroom and Photoshop. Being able to highlight the images, I can just highlight the thumbnails in Lightroom, export as layers to Photoshop, blend, merge, align, all of that stuff, bring it back in the Lightroom and finish editing. That workflow, it sounds like a lot of steps, but it's very, very smooth. And, it's something I do 100% of the time whenever I do a professional job, real estate, right? I have to bracket shots, I have to do flash shots, and I have to layer and merge and blend, paintbrush, all of that stuff. And in theory, you could do it using Affinity Photo, because Affinity Photo has layering, focus stacking, HDR, all of that stuff. But the workflow is nowhere near as smooth, because I would have to find the files in my file explorer. It's very, very awkward. I can't do any pruning of the files beforehand because you're working with File Explorer. So that workflow is just unusable for any professional to do the kind of work that I do. I can see where other professionals in different fields may not have this kind of workflow problem, and Affinity or Photolab would be just fine. And but I for me, it's just not the case. So wow, that was a long dissertation on Photolab. Nobody even asked me about it, really. Oh, no, I'm sorry, Dave Nelson did, right? Okay. But yeah, Dave, I'll try and do some tutorials on Photolab. You probably have seen my live streaming, photo editing live stream. I use Photolab 4 in the last live stream to edit the images. So, I mean, if you're already fairly competent at working your way around Photolab 4 Elite, then watching my live photo editing sessions is almost like a tutorial, right? Because I'm cropping in, I'm making adjustments, I'm using layers and brushes, all that stuff in Photolab 4, but it's not a step-by-step, or obviously it's just me editing live, right? And you can pick up what you can from that, but until I develop a full-on video tutorial. Yeah, Mike, no problem. Thanks, Rob. I will save dollars on the 8-25. Yeah, just save your money. That's what I'm doing. If it goes on sale, I can use it professionally, because that 7-14 that I use is, it's got that purple blob problem. If you saw my last video or photo walk, you'll see one of the issues I ran into with purple blobs in one of the images. It wasn't too bad on that one, but it was there. And if I'm doing work professionally, getting paid for stuff, I cannot have defects like that in my work, right? So an 8-25 would fix that. And the reason, my 8mm fisheye fixes that problem. It doesn't have a purple blob problem. So sometimes I'll use that lens for the still shots. But the problem with the 8mm fisheye is not really great for doing video work. because of the barrel distortion. And then I have to kind of correct that in post-processing using whatever tools are for video. And it's not perfect, right? There's still something a little bit off. It may be good enough, but an 8-25 being a rectilinear lens would eliminate that problem for me in the video work that I do. And also having that zoom range gives me some more creative control when I'm on site, because I don't, when you shoot super wide in video, I don't care how good the image stabilization is, it looks wonky, you know, and so I have to zoom in a little bit, and that's another reason I can't use the 8mm fisheye for video, because even though I might be able to get the correction close enough, the stabilization is not ideal on a super wide angle lens like that. And so I'm trying to justify buying an 8-25 in my head, basically. But I use the 7-14 for video, but I get that purple blobbing problem in my videos time to time, and it's a headache, and it just doesn't look professional. Okay, System Natura is here. Good to see you. And let's see. Good morning, Music Sound Gear. And Randy says his 12mm f2 and the M5 Mark III is the perfect hiking setup. Yeah, it's awesome. That is a good combo. And the great Vanzini, getting used to different focal lengths is interesting with 4/3 coming from full frame. Yeah, I'm totally converted. When I think about focal length, I think in terms of micro 4/3 and the field of view that I get on a micro 4/3 system. And I have to convert to full frame sometimes when people ask me questions about focal length, and it can be confusing because I hate it when people say, this is an 8-25, but you're getting a 16-50 range, and I'm like, 16-50 on what? The full frame, obviously, because that's kind of the standard for people talking about focal length. But honestly, a better way, they should talk about field of view with a lens. Like, that should be how lenses are measured, in my opinion. I mean, maybe that'll come with its own problems that I'm not thinking of. But if somebody tells me this has a 120-degree field of view, that makes sense to me, right? I can make sense of that. Or this has a 45-degree angle of view. I don't know, but that you still run into the same issue with full frame versus crop, because your field of view will be smaller on a micro 4/3. So maybe, why was I thinking? But yeah, that like that conversion process would still have to take place, right? So 45 degrees on micro 4/3 would probably be 90 degrees on full frame. You just double it. But field of view makes more sense to me than saying this is an 8mm lens. Well, how wide is that? Well, that's 175 degrees. I'm like, 8mm is a 175-degree field of view. Why don't they just say 175-degree field of view instead of telling me 8mm? And only with experience and practice do you get a feel for, okay, 8mm is pretty wide, right? But I can imagine to a newbie, somebody just getting into photography, you say this is an 8mm lens, and they're like, well, is that wide? Is that telephoto? Like, it doesn't have any, you don't have any reference, I guess. Well, anyway, it's too late. We're stuck with the millimeter system, so I'm not going to waste any more time on it. And System Natura says, I'm happy with my 8-18 Panasonic I use for both my Olympus CM1 Mark III and G9. This is good lens with no external moving parts, all internal zoom. That is attractive, right? Not having to actually physically zoom the lens in and out. But that said, for me, the Olympus 9-18 would be a better choice. Smaller, lighter, probably nearly as sharp, close enough anyway. And it's like a third the weight of, I know it's an f4 lens, but for the work that I do, and I still consider the 9-18 time to time. I'm like, why spend $1,000 on an 8-25 when the 9-18 is really close, right? I could probably get by. A 9 might be a little tight. I really like being able to go to 7 or 8 millimeters, but I could get by with 9, right? I could still make nice photos with 9 millimeters. And Lay Kemp, hello. Good to see you too. I'm doing well, thank you. And David Crooks is here. Oh, hey, David. Good to see you. No photo walk this morning. Did you see my video that I posted yesterday? Because I went out with David Crooks. He runs the local photo club yesterday, and I got there late, right? So I had 15 minutes to shoot before we were all going to break and go have breakfast. And to me, the breakfast is almost as important as the photo shoot itself, right? The photo walk itself. So I said, oh, I got 15 minutes. So I said, I'll be right back. So I went out and vlogged for 15 minutes. And let me tell you something. You'll see if you saw the video, it's not easy. It wasn't easy for me to get out there and just start snapping pictures and try to get something halfway decent. I wasn't happy with really any of those pictures, but I thought it was very challenging. So I wanted to share that. But in terms of like recording and post-processing, man, it was butter. It was like I just pushed the record button on my vlogging camera, this little guy here, right? And let it stay on because it'll record unlimited, time. I don't have to put files together later. And then when I got home, I just had one video file to just cut here and there and then insert some images. And I was able to, and it took me about 3 hours to post-process that video to make that video. But still, that's like half the time, if not more, than it would like a normal vlog where I go out for a couple of hours, take my time to take pictures and frame and, do retakes and all of that. And I can't even imagine how these guys like Thomas Heaton or even James Popsis to some extent, a lot of these other vloggers, man, they take a lot of time with B-roll, so they spend a lot more time in the field, because they'll cut, from today to the next day, right? They'll be like, okay, I'm out this morning and I'm going to go up this hill, and there's all kinds of B-roll, them climbing up the hill, then they're coming back down to get their camera, so they've climbed that hill twice. And then they'll cut, says, okay, this is now Tuesday morning and I'm going to go back and try and do this. And it's like, wow, they just spend so much time. That takes so much work. And I could make the time to do something like that, but I don't have the willpower, the motivation to do that kind of work for a vlog, right? If you look at Camera Conspiracy, he just holds the camera out and just jibber jabbers, and he's done, right? And that's kind of my same vlogging style. I just hold the camera out, take a few pictures, and I'm done. Screw all this B-roll. Oh my God. It's like, but now that I got my dash cam, oh, I'm so excited about this. I'm gonna try and do a review. I'm so busy this week though. Like I said, I got 2 photo jobs. I have another thing I have to do. So I got like 5 things on my calendar this week, which is, not related to my YouTube channel. that's a busy week for me. All right. Yeah, there's a chance that sunflowers may not be peak for a while. So yeah, we'll have to wait till August maybe. Music Sound Gear says I've been using the Olympus 14 to 150 a lot lately on my EM1 Mark II. Great lens. Yes, it is. It is a fantastic lens, and it just it gives you the kind of flexibility you can have when you have such a wide zoom range that you won't get with the prime, right? Obviously. And Peter Beek says, I'm a 49% shareholder. Wife is 51%, but as managing director, according to lawyers, I have full say as to what I want to do with the company, land, and house. Oh, that's not related to anything I'm talking about. Sorry. I didn't mean to read that out loud. I thought that might have been. And Gigafish is here. Good to see you. I chickened out for the meet yesterday. Oh, that's right. You're local to us. I'll show up for the sunflower meet. Yeah, that may get postponed. I think we're going to Meadowlark again this week. I have to look at the schedule. And Chuck Eager says, does Photolab 4 have a nice library system like Lightroom? No. It does have some ability to sort and organize your images when you're looking at a folder. So let's say I'm looking at the images I took yesterday in that folder. I can sort them by file extension name. I can sort them by raw image, and then I can filter as well. I can filter by images that I've pruned by picking, or I can filter by stars. So there's some basic filtering type things that you can do folder per folder. Okay. I haven't seen a way to pick, like if I want to look at the entire, like let's say I want to look at 3 weeks worth of stuff, right? I haven't seen a way to highlight, 3 weeks of images and then start sorting them. I know you can do it folder by folder. There may be a way to do it. I just haven't found it yet. The other thing you can do with it, let's say you want to look for all your images that you shot at ISO, 200 at f8, for example, right? Because you can do that very easily in Lightroom. You can do that in Photolab 4, but there's a couple of caveats, right? It's going to search the entire catalog or index that it has indexed already. If the folder, there's a lot of steps here. It's not as polished as Lightroom, but it does have that functionality. So let's say I want to, like, when you open a folder up for the first time, it automatically indexes and catalogs things, right? Because you can't import directly into Photolab. You have to go to the file browser in Photolab, select a folder, and it'll automatically index and catalog those images. And now it becomes part of the catalog, kind of similar to Lightroom. And then you can search everything in your catalog by various EXIF data, by file date, etc. So if you put in, I want to search for ISO 200 images at f8 and the shutter speed of 1/1000th of a second, just for example, you got 3 criteria. You can search on those 3 criteria, and it'll look through the entire catalog that you have. And let's say you don't want to look at stuff you took last year. You just want to look at stuff that, okay, in the last 2 weeks, or in the last 2 weeks, what images have I done? That's a little trickier. I don't know how to select a range of dates, because in Lightroom you can select a range of folders and then only search within those folders. With Photolab 4, I found you can select, the EXIF data, aperture, shutter speed, ISO, and select a date, a specific date, and it'll only search for that specific date. But it's a search feature. It's not it's not as polished with Lightroom where you have all your headers and columns at the top and you select it just quickly, click here, click there, and it'll show everything. And you say, well, I only want to look at these certain folders. Then you just highlight the folders on the left and it'll redo things. So yeah, it's not as organized. So what's the workaround? There is a workaround for this entire issue. And that is to use the free Adobe Bridge, because Adobe Bridge is a very similar catalog, right, as Lightroom. Not quite exactly the same, but it's definitely way more sophisticated than the cataloging system Photolab 4 has. So that adds another layer of things to the suite of software you'd need if you want to go full on Photolab 4 and have a lot of the functionality built into Lightroom and Photoshop. Because now we're up to what? You need Fastone to import your images. Well, you can skip Fastone and just get Adobe Bridge. Well, Adobe Bridge, that doesn't import either, come to think of it, if I recall correctly. I don't use Adobe Bridge much. So you still may need Fastone to import. Then you need Adobe Bridge to catalog and organize your images, very similar to how Lightroom does in terms of polish. And then Photolab 4 and Affinity Photo. So now you got 4 softwares on your computer. And just to do everything Lightroom and Photoshop can do for $10 a month is what I pay here in the US. So it's, yeah, when you start loading all of these things on top, you're like, man, that's not cheap, right? $270 plus 50 for Affinity, for example. Why isn't there a better solution all in one that will process as well, that'll do the kind of processing I really like I get with Photolab 4? Because I feel like for $200, Photolab 4 should have more of these features built in. They should definitely have HDR focus stacking, panorama built in. They should definitely have a more robust database access type thing, cataloging system. They're collecting the data at least into a catalog. So all they need to do is hire a good database person to build the front end so that we can access the files a little easier like we do in Lightroom. But, you keep hearing the argument, we don't want to do that. I don't know if it's Photolab 4, but I've heard the argument that these software companies, we want to focus on the photo editing and do the best job we can there. The cataloging and organization, all of that, we'll leave that to you, basically, to figure it out. Whereas Lightroom and Photoshop, my God, the cataloging system is so polished and so good. I really like being able to search for things, and it helped me out a lot to improve my photography in the sense that I can look for specific EXIF data that I was having problems with and try to improve on that. So I can say, let me see all of my images that I took at ISO, 6400 and, shutter speeds of 1/20th of a second, for example. And I'll analyze those photos to see, how good is my hand holding technique? How good are the images in terms of noise? Like if the light is low at ISO 6400, how bad is the noise in the shadows? So it really helped me analyze sort of the range, not range, what's the word? The capability or the limits of my camera. And then I can adapt my photography accordingly, right? Because, cameras have limits. And this is just one example of how I use the cataloging system. So I can say, okay, well, if I'm at ISO 6400 and I'm down to 1/20th of a second because the light is so low on this particular image and I'm getting tons of grain, I said, I got to figure out a way to work around this, right? So do I shoot at a higher ISO to get a faster shutter speed? I mean, is the problem motion blur? Is the problem, what are the different problems I'm running into with these settings? and what can I control, and what can I not control because it's a limitation of the camera, and how can I adapt or make adjustments in that. So yeah, uh, these kind of things, like I said, you can do it in Photolab 4 in terms of searching for images, but it's not anywhere near as polished as Lightroom, being able to just click a few things and quickly narrow down. Like I was trying to sort the images this morning. Like I had my Panasonic DCS5 and my EM1 Mark III side by side. I have a folder where I took images side by side with these two cameras, and I was struggling a little bit with comparing the images because I highlighted, all of the Panasonic images. I gave it 1 star, and then the OMDs I gave 0 stars, and then I gave then I picked. You can pick certain ones, but what it's lacking is you can't assign a color code to the images, because what I wanted to do it again was say, okay, these are images that I use flash, so I give them a blue color code, and these are the images from the M1. So there's some granularity problems there too. I mean, I don't know if I'm boring people to tears with these issues, but this is what I was running into this morning personally. Not just this morning, but since I've been using Photolab 4, and I've had to think of workarounds or different ways of organizing the photos or pruning the images in a way that helps me to improve my photography. Okay, let me go back to the chat and see where we're at, because once I start talking, sometimes I get way behind. And John Truman says, more importantly, who is your favorite Doctor Who? Hartnell, Troughton, Tom Baker, Peter, Colin? Okay. My favorite, if you're talking about the new series, like when what's his name started recently, of the new series, the reboot, so to speak, I'd say Tennant is my favorite, right? I just thought he nailed it. Of the old series, I like Tom Baker probably the best, and a close second is Troughton, maybe? I can't remember. I don't see his name. Oh, Pertwee is a very close second. The problem with Pertwee is they limited to a lot of his stuff just on Earth, right? Whereas I like Tom Baker going out into space a little bit more and doing these much bigger arcs across time and space, versus Pertwee was just kind of limited to, whatever showed up on Earth, he had to go over and take care of it. But I like Pertwee. He was like James Bond, right? He was kind of more of the James Bond of all the doctors. He, because he'd have gadgets and vehicles, and he was a little more active. He'd always do that karate chop, right? So I like that. And Tom Baker, I like the stories better in Tom Baker. They were much bigger stories. They weren't limited to just the Earth, right? And of course, he was very good as a Doctor as well. And then the new series, Tennant's kind of my favorite. I just I don't know. I just liked him. I like the first guy, the series 1. The first guy was good too. I can't remember his name. He was Eccleston, right? Eccleston. Anyway, I liked him, and it was really sad to see him stop after 1 season. But then Tennant was pretty awesome. Okay, that's enough Doctor Who. And the rest of Capaldi and Smith. Smith was okay. Jody, the stories I wasn't a big fan of. I felt like it went too much to kids, right? I mean, it's always been kind of a kid show, but I felt like that was more of a kid show to an extreme because they had these weird little characters. So I only watched a few episodes and I lost interest pretty quickly. I didn't like McCoy or McGain. Those are the ones. Hartnell, no, not a big fan. Just the storylines were too. It's a little too old for me. I might have liked it if I was watching it at that age, but right now I can't watch it. Lake Camp says my photo lab has the latest update, as has Windows, but the database is still borked. Oh, yeah. There is a workaround. Well, I don't know exactly what problems you're having, but what I did is I moved the entire folder 2020 to a temporary folder, then moved it back to where it was using Windows Explorer, right? And then Photolab 4 found everything just fine, and I haven't had any problems since. But that's what I did. I used Windows Explorer to move the folder to a temporary area, waited for everything to copy over, then moved it back to where it's supposed to be. And it only takes like 10 seconds, right? Try that and see if that fixes it. Brad Becker says, Rob Trick, sounds like you need to do an I edit your picture segment with Photolab 4 unless you're already doing it. Yeah, I just started doing it. The one I did last week was my very first one that I just almost exclusively used Photolab 4. I believe that's the case. And the Great Vanzini just ordered the 45-1.8. Yeah, you'll love that lens. It's great. And let's see. Can't help but feel Lightroom and Photoshop is the best option. Yeah, I mean, if you have to curate tens of thousands of images, it's hard to beat Lightroom and Photoshop. I mean, you can, because they integrate, they've been doing it forever. So they have a huge head start by decades, right? So that integration is pretty amazing. Now, Capture One, something that Walter uses a lot, I mean, almost exclusively, may have a good database option and may have I haven't used Capture One in a long time. And then I was only using the free version. So I can't speak to Capture One, but I think that's come down in price a little bit. But you guys will have to talk to Walter about Capture One. Maybe Robin Wong, he uses it. John Truman says, agreed, Tenet was great. Yeah, I have the box season set for all of Tenet's on Blu-ray. So sometimes I'll just pop that in and binge. It's weird. There's some shows I can just watch over and over again. And let's see. The problem is the same. Lake Camp says the problem is the same as you, Rob. It just doesn't update and show all the files. Yeah. So, like I said, Lay, that's what I did. I just moved the folder out and back in, and then all of them showed up. So if you do that for the entire folder, like I have mine organized by year, quarter, day, I just moved the entire year out and moved it back in, and it fixed it. I use Olympus Workspace to downgrade 4K to 1080p. Really? I've never used Workspace for any of my video. That's interesting. I'll have to try that once. And Wally, W07 or WQ, I can't read that. But anyway, Wally says, hi, Rob. I'm thinking about getting the battery grip for the M1 Mark II, but I don't want it permanently attached. Is it easy to remove and return to the original? Do I need to use a screwdriver? Thanks. No, I think it's just a thumb screw that you twist and it comes right off. I don't own it, but when I looked at one, it was just a thumb screw and it just comes right off. But if anybody, Randy might be able to answer, or one of you here in the chat room can answer for Wally for me. If you have the grip, is it easy to take on and off? It's not something I use, so I can't speak to actually physically doing it all the time myself. But when I looked at it, it looks like it just screws on and off. And System Mature says, I only use Affinity, Olympus Workspace, and Topaz for editing. Stopped using Adobe when Premiere got too expensive and unnecessary editing for an amateur. Yeah, Affinity with Olympus Workspace, those are two very complementary programs. Workspace does a great job. It allows you to import your photos. It has some very basic database type stuff. Extremely simple, but it's very competent. But it doesn't have focus stacking, panorama, HDR. It doesn't have like these kind of features that Affinity does. And Affinity is so cheap. Like I said, I got mine for $25. It's a very nice complement to Olympus Workspace. And Topaz, I'm still playing around with. I do want to give Topaz a thorough vetting of the denoising, particularly the AI sharpening. These two features are very good in Topaz, though not as good as the Deep Prime with DxO, and not as good as the On1 that I just reviewed. So I did that video, right? And I was just using auto settings. Now Topaz has like 4 AI models: standard, clear, very noisy, and something else, right? It has these 4 AI models. And I selected each one and picked the best one, but I clicked the auto button. Now, if you start playing with the sliders instead of using auto, you can get better results than what I did in that video. But my rationale is, if I'm paying for software, I don't want to do all that work. I want the software to do all the work. Hence the term artificial intelligence, right? It needs to figure these things out for me instead of me playing with sliders. Now, I like the option of having sliders so that I can tweak it if I want to. But I don't like having to tweak it to get better results, significantly better results. Because you can get significantly better results if you start tweaking things in Topaz. But I just feel like I shouldn't have to do that. And On1 and DxO, pretty much right out of the gate using auto settings, I get almost perfect results. And then I just can tweak it a little bit if I want to. But a lot of times I don't need to tweak it. I can just use it as is. And that's the problem I had with Topaz in the last few videos I've done where I've talked about Topaz is it doesn't just automatically give you a great result. You have to tweak it a little bit and play with the AI models and try different things. And that's just, to me, not ideal. But I'm going to vet it a little more. Now, Topaz Sharpen AI is awesome. I mean, it's not a miracle worker. It's not going to take a blurry image and sharpen it up for you. If it's very blurry or if there's motion blur, these kind of things, there's no miracle, right, for that. But I have taken slides that, were out of focus just a little, and use Sharpen AI, and I got so much better results than I could ever hope to get using Lightroom. So it's it's multiple times better than Lightroom at sharpening things, particularly when they're out of focus. So that's another video that I'm going to be working on, is looking at Sharpen AI. Because it's actually pretty impressive, So when I had the Mark II, the grip comes off very easy. Okay, thanks, Randy. I knew you would know because you're you have everything, right? And System Mature says, just use Topaz denoise sharpening to polish up the editing I've done in Affinity, often just to raw photos. Yes. Yeah, I mean, if you just need some minor denoising and things like that, they all do a great job. But it's when you get into the heavy noise images, and I got criticized for, why are you denoising images you took at 25,600? And I'm like, well, that's because I take a lot of images at 25,600. I don't care about noise. But if I'm going to get a denoising software, I want the one that does the best job, right? So yeah, anyway, but I did notice that when you just need a little bit of noise reduction, Topaz, and well, any of them will do a better job than Lightroom by itself. So let's say you're trying to denoise an image that's at ISO 800. I'm just picking a number. I would imagine all three software will do a very competent job cleaning those up, sharpening, all of that stuff, and do a better job than you can do in Lightroom by itself. Because Lightroom is effectively a global denoiser type thing. You can do a little bit of masking, but it doesn't apply any artificial intelligence of trying to figure out, where a line is, where a soft area is, where texture is, right? And then try and do these corrections. It's a global thing with some minor masking. The artificial intelligence in these software looks for all of these additional characteristics of the image and tries to correct those intelligently. And that's why no matter what you do in Lightroom, these AI softwares are going to do a better job. And of course you have to, it may make some mistakes, right? And you can adjust for that, but okay. Oh, Andreas, how are you? I was a few minutes late myself. It's okay. To create my videos, I use Open's How to Assemble Video, Inkscape for title, and Audacity for audio stuff. All free software and very easy to use. Okay. I've never used any of those. I've used Audacity sometimes, and I still do rarely. I do use Audacity. But I use DaVinci Resolve 99% of the time, and it's free. The free version of DaVinci. So that may be a better all-in-one software for you. Something you might want to migrate to, Randy, is DaVinci Resolve, the free edition. It's very powerful. And John Follows says, a guy in the UK called Robin Wally has a YouTube channel called Lenscraft. He shows how to integrate DxO Photolab with Lightroom. Also uses Affinity and other apps. Okay, good. Good to know. The integration with Photolab 4 is weak. I'd rather just work in Photolab 4 than go into Lightroom and then activate the plugin and go back to Photolab. But my workflow and my requirements may be different than a lot of people, right? So sometimes I'll find what I'll do is I'll have to find the image in Lightroom because I know how to find things in Lightroom. It has a very comprehensive database. And once I find it in Lightroom, I just open that folder up in Photolab 4 and work with all the images in that folder. And Terry says, Topaz does an incredible job with noise and sharpening on my Olympus files. Yeah, it's good. I mean, I took a very high ISO image the other day because I'm playing with Topaz, right? I'm trying to, I really want to give it a fair shake because if you watch the 2 reviews I did with Topaz in it against Deep Prime and stuff, to my eyes, Deep Prime was the clear winner. Then On One did a better job. Then Topaz. But again, I was using the auto mode between the different models. I picked the best AI model, what looked the best to me, then just clicked auto. But I'm trying to work with Topaz a little bit, and because Topaz has a lot of other benefits, right? It'll work with JPEGs, TIFFs, it doesn't care what kind of file it is, basically. So it's a lot more flexible. And it integrates extremely well with Photoshop and Lightroom, meaning, the workflow is very, very smooth. It's like a right click, edit in Topaz. And then you edit in Topaz, process in Topaz is a better word. Then it takes you right back to Lightroom. The image opens up, processed. So it's very smooth. I like that a lot. Whereas DxO, that workflow is not quite as fluid. You have to kind of work around the file system a little bit. Terry says, I still use Photoshop, but I only shoot and edit very few photos at any one setting, always raw images. Yes. For my photo walks, 200-300 images, half of those are raw, so 150. And then I prune those, and yeah, I'm down to like maybe a dozen images that I would process using any kind of AI software. For my professional work, I did a test run yesterday with Photolab 4 where I selected, 100 and some images, because I'll typically take 300 raw images on a photo job. And that's mostly because they're bracketed, right? So I got 3 to 5 shots per room. And that workflow was not bad. Basically, I selected all the raw images in Photolab 4, applied the optical corrections and deep prime, and then exported them as DNGs. And then I opened these DNGs up in Photoshop as layers and was able to do the editing that I wanted to do. And the images came out better than when I originally did it using only Photoshop. So I think I've come up with a workflow, because like I said, I have a job tomorrow, or is it tomorrow? Yeah, I have a job tomorrow I need to do. And that's the workflow I'm going to use. So we'll see. We'll see how it comes out. But I suspect that I'm going to be extremely happy. The client is going to be like, these are the same great images you always send me. They're not going to know any difference, right? But I will be like, wow, these are the kind of images I really would have liked to have delivered in the past, now that I can do this. And like I said, I don't think my clients will notice. They don't notice like, oh, there's a little noise in this shadow corner up here, or there's, the alignment over here is a little bit off. They don't notice that crap, because everything gets exported down to 2 megapixels. And then by the time they upload it to their site, it's like all grainy anyway, not grainy, but pixelated because of the JPEG compression that these different systems they upload to. But for me, I'm going to be like, wow, these are awesome. At least that's what I'm looking forward to doing, being able to deliver better images. Whether or not the client will notice is a whole different thing. I'm about 99.9% sure they're not going to notice any difference that I'm using Photolab 4 now. But I will, and I'll know that the images are better. And that makes me very happy. And it's important that you're happy with your own work, regardless of what the client thinks, right? If you're delivering your very best, and you're delivering your very best to your client, it's going to come out in your interaction with the client. And they're going to pick up on that, because, you have to talk to them and interact with them, right? I mean, doing business is not about the product necessarily. It's about your interaction and rapport with your clients. And they can praise you, forgive you, refer you. You know, if you have a good rapport with your clients, you know, you're going to do more business regardless of your work. I mean, it can't be crap, obviously. You have to be competitive, you have to have a certain skill set, all of that. But I know for a fact there are much better photographers than me doing the same work I'm doing for less money, right? And that's just a fact. Like, it's killing me that I'm doing this job tomorrow, and I'm charging a little less than one of my competitors, but I know they do 10 times better job than I do. You know, not 10 times, but they do a better job than I can. And for a little more money, they can do a lot better job. But I'm getting the business because of multiple factors, right? One is I have a good rapport with the client, and I'm fast. You know, I can be there tomorrow. This other person, they can't do it tomorrow. They could probably do it later in the week, but they're booked. That's probably really why I got the job, right? But um, you know, I'm fast and I deliver fast. Usually same day, next day, I got the images done and processed, and the work is very good. You know, and is it so much better that the client can tell the difference between my work and their work? I don't know, but I can tell. I can tell they're doing a better job. Very competent, very good job. I don't know if the client can tell the difference between my work and their work, to be honest, uh, because I've never gotten one complaint from this client about my work. They've never said, you know, gee, you know, these images, you know what I mean? They've always replied with, man, these are fantastic. These are great, right? But when I look at the work from some other photographers, I'm like, oh my God, they did such a good job with that. I would have a hard time. I could do that image, but I can't, like, just, you know, I can't do it for the price that they're charging. I'm like, wow, how did they, you know, uh, how do they do that? I don't know how they can shoot for that price and do that kind of quality work. Uh, and it's not because of the gear. I mean, I know they're using $6,000, and you know they have a Canon 5D Mark IV. They're using a tilt shift lens, which is another 1,500 to 2,000 bucks. You know, and then of course, you know, the gimbals and all of the stuff for the video work. I mean, they're using very expensive gear. But when I look at the photography, the 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 kind of work they're doing has nothing to do with the gear, the quality of their images. The quality of their images is because of their photography skill set, both on site and when they do their editing, photo editing or video editing. Has nothing to do with the gear, because they could take the same gear I'm using. I use my M1 Mark III, right? And do the same job and get the same results. No problem. So I know for a fact, yeah, they're using full frame, expensive ass gear, but it has nothing to do with the quality of their work. I can see the quality of their work is because of the kind of skills and techniques that they're using. You know, being able to position the camera in the right place, being able to compose whatever scene is in front of them with the objects in the right places, and getting their lines and angles straight. You know, I'm a freak about getting lines and angles right. And then the lighting, you know, and the layering that they do in Photoshop. I mean, I can see a very high skill level in their work with nothing to do with their gear. The only thing that I would say would make a difference is that tilt shift lens. It gives them a certain perspective that, for me, I have to shoot a wider angle and adjust the perspective in post processing. So in theory, I lose some pixels and quality resolution, right, when I do that. Whereas if you're using a tilt shift lens, you don't lose any resolution. But that said, these images get exported at 2 megapixels, right? I mean, and then, like I said, by the time it's uploaded back to their site or wherever they're going to post it, the compression applied to these images just negate any resolution advantage that a tilt shift lens would give me. So in my mind, it comes to they're using that gear because it makes them happy and helps them with their, they have a much higher level of confidence of the images that they can deliver. But ultimately, can the client tell the difference? I seriously doubt it. Like, I didn't know that he was using a 5D Mark IV and a tilt shift lens, a Canon F4, like an expensive Canon tilt shift lens, until I pulled down the EXIF data and looked at, okay, what did he use to shoot with this? And I'm like, man, he used like this $2,000 tilt shift lens. He's using a 5D Mark IV, and God knows, he made a couple of mistakes. I did find a couple of mistakes that a client would really never notice unless they're pixel peeping. Mistakes that, I make too, right? Like sometimes you get reflections of the tripod in the shot. You have to be careful of things like that. But these are minor things. Okay, I've been ranting about something. I don't know. Let me move on. Oh, Arthur's here. Hello, Arthur. And Roberto's here. Oh, okay. Adobe has a free PP called Rush for video editing. I guess you mean post-processing. Never heard of it. And let's see. Christine says, more than 100 photos per walk. Do you keep the non-keepers as well for later? Yeah, I keep them. I keep everything mostly. I mean, I do a little bit of pruning and delete stuff. Only because disk space is relatively cheap. So I keep them. Not that I really need to. I should delete a lot of stuff, but it will take me longer to delete things that I'll never edit or use than to just keep them on the hard drive. I don't want to take the time to prune out all that stuff. I mean, I do some pruning sometimes where I delete things in bulk. What I am very conscious of, though, is video. I delete a ton of video. Like this photo walk I did yesterday, next week, I'm going to delete all the video from it. So every month, I'm pretty regular, but about every month, I'll go and delete tons of video. Because, man, that takes up so much hard drive space. And it's not necessary. Once I make the video, I don't really need all of the footage I took from that walk. And Dave Nuss says, trying to enjoy photography in the age of 20 softwares and very technical. Yeah, I know. There's a lot of overhead in photography if you really get into it. I mean, ultimately, all you need is your camera and Olympus Workspace, right? Or Faststone or whatever, Irfan. You just need like one photo editing software. And not worry about the noise in your image and not worry about getting tack sharp or adjusting sharpening or adjusting, but that's what we do as enthusiasts, right? We like to get into, there's a little bit of purple fringing here. We got to get rid of that. And I see a little bit of softness up in this corner. We're going to crop that out, or we're going to do some optical corrections in software. And I'm going to use the AI software to kind of get rid of this noise, or, it can be exhausting sometimes, though. I know what you mean, having all of this different software to do different things. And Terry says, waiting for the TT Artisan's 17 millimeter as soon as I can buy it. I plan to use it. Okay. Yeah, 17 is a great focal length. I mean, I like the Olympus 17. I don't, but if the T Artisans is any good, I mean, it's a good focal length regardless of brand. Pride in your work makes your whole life better, eh? Yeah, that sums it up. Take pride in your work. It'll come through in how you interact with your clients. Go Branson. Who's that? Branson is in the air. Rock. Oh, that must be the Virgin Air rocket thing. So they're going to launch at 1:30. Oh, we might be able to catch that then. Yeah, some spendy gear, right? Yeah, when I was talking about that stuff. The 100 to 400. I'm still on the fence about that lens. Not optic, not in terms of its quality or sharpness and all that, but just, do I really need that lens, you know? Still on the fence. And Arthur says, I never delete anything. Never. Yeah. Yeah, photos I don't delete too much. I'll delete a lot of stuff that are like I was in this folder. Where it's just self-portraits and I was practicing some flash. But I don't need them now. I was thinking about just deleting that folder, but then sometimes I think about, I may want to go back and look at those again and see what I was doing. I don't know. I love you talking about pruning your images. It gives me a smile and a giggle. I don't know if that's the technical term or not, but it's definitely the correct verbiage, I think. And Randy says, I only delete obvious stuff, maybe 500,000 photos on old hard drives and such. I know. And weird to say, but Olympus noise actually looks good sometimes. Yeah. I mean, like the photos that I took I did some portraits a year or two ago, and I intentionally set the ISO to 25,000, 600, because I love the look of the grain, and I wanted a grainy image, so I intentionally set it, and I thought the images came out just fine. Let's see if I can find those. If I look at my videos, important. Let's see, this video I made, I published this, wow, April 2019. April what? April 20th of 2019. So this would be in, I think I can share this folder. Let me see. See if I can share this screen with you. Control 2. Yeah. So I need to go to 2019. April would be second quarter. April 20th. So I probably took the pictures on the 19th. Now it's cataloging the images, as you can see. Hopefully nothing inappropriate shows up. Yeah, it's not this folder, but I need to load EM10 Mark II with the 40 to 150. It might be this folder, but I thought I used a wider angle than that. Let me let me look at the chat section while that's indexing. Christine M says, my question, weather sealing from above, any experience from your side? My configure EM1 Mark III 12 to 40 Pro. I'm not sure what you mean by weather sealing from above. I mean, weather sealing is always good to have, but it's not a must-have. If you could rephrase the question for me, I'm not sure what you mean. I'm sorry, Christine. If you could rephrase that for me. Randy says, I'm getting real good bird photos with a Nikon DF and 70 to 300E lens in DX mode, which makes it 450 and use ISO 3200. Oh, yeah, the DF. Oh, how good is the sealing? Any experience? Well, yeah, I've never really gone out in bad weather though with these lenses. So yeah, I would say my experience is pretty limited. So I can't really comment on that. I mean, my 12 to 40 Pro I left outside with no lens cap on the back, and it rained and got filled with water and ice, but that doesn't count. So yeah, I can't comment on how good. I mean, I only hear good things about it, but personally I can't comment on it. I have to admit the Nikon Z FC with their 28 is tempting. Oh yeah. That is a really cool looking camera, right? It looks very vintage. It looks like a film camera. And it's what, $1,100 with a lens? That's pretty sweet. I don't know. I mean, money no object. I'd probably buy one just because it's kind of cool. But I'm not a money no object guy anymore, right? I'm trying to think. I mean, my Pen F is kind of like that, right? It's very vintage looking. So my vintage, and of course I got all the film cameras, which are all vintage. That is pretty. That kind of fulfills my itch to have a vintage digital camera as my Pen F, and then actually shooting real film sometimes. Oh, here it is. This image here. Here's one I took at 25,000. So it has a lot of noise in the color, right? So I just I'll just go to black and white, and I think that looks great. you know. I think the noise looks really good at 25,000 on this image. So I was this is an image I was very intentional about using high ISO. Going back to Terry's comment. So that was one. And these are just straight out of camera. It's another one that's kind of cool. Oh, that's a JPEG. Hold on. ISO 400. No. What was this at? This was at ISO. Yeah, these were the low ISO shots. Oh, it's in this folder. Sorry. Yeah, this is another one. ISO 25,000. So I just converted to black and white, and I think the grain looks great on this. You know. And this one. This is another one I did. I think it's going. Oh. Here's one at ISO 25,000, right? So I just convert to black and white, and I just love the grain at 25. This is my Pen F, but it doesn't matter. Any of the Olympuses, right? That's a good shot there. I just crop in. Look at this. My button's broken over here. This was my lucky jacket. Okay. I suspect I would feel right at home with the ZFC. Yeah. It is really cool. It's very tempting. It is very tempting just to kind of have a camera, but like I said, my Pen F kind of cures that itch to get a camera like that. And then once you buy a camera like that, my problem with that camera, the ZFC, is that it is a Z mount, and then you have to get all the Z mount lenses for it, right? I would rather get the Nikon DF, which is very vintage looking as well. It still costs more than the ZFC. I mean, I was looking at some used ones. They wanted like $1,600 for it. Crazy. But at least with the Nikon ZF, you can just, am I getting that right? The Nikon ZF? You know, the full frame one, right? That Nikon came out with a few years ago. You can mount regular Nikon F mount lenses to it, and I got a ton of those. So ultimately, it's cheaper for me to get the full frame Nikon ZF, because I don't have to buy any lenses. I got a bunch of Nikon F mount lenses, vintage and modern, you know, the S versions. Oh, hey, Barry, how are you? E7 cord, yep. And yeah, the ZFC is a mini DF. Yeah, the Nikon DF is an F mount, and I can just, so ultimately the DF will be cheaper for me because I won't have to buy any lenses. And I still, the DF is on my short list of cameras that I want to own because of the vintage styling, you know. The ZFC is very cool, but I don't have the lens collection for it. So it'd be like I'd buy that with the 28 millimeters, and that would be it. I would never buy another lens for it, probably. Yeah, they make the ZF mount lenses. Yeah, Terry makes a point that they sell an adapter so you can mount F mount lenses onto the ZFC. But that just seems awkward to me a little bit. I would much rather mount the lenses directly to the camera rather than going through the adapter. But what's really holding me back from a Nikon DF is I still have my Nikon D750, which I can adapt all my F mount lenses to, obviously. So the DF is really way on the back burner because it would be purely a luxury purchase. It would have nothing to do with my needs as a photographer. If that came out 2 years ago, you'd be a Nikon guy today. That's funny. That's true. I was almost a Fuji guy, because I was Nikon for a while, and then I almost went to Fuji, but I ended up with Olympus, which I know many of you guys have heard that story before. But yeah, I've seen your Flickr. I've seen you do a few DF images lately, if I recall correctly. The 20 to 35 f2.8D. Wow, I haven't seen that lens. That's pretty cool. My favorite lens is still my Zeiss 35 millimeter f2 Distagon. That's an F mount lens that's just too heavy to adapt to a Micro Four Thirds. It's just, I tried a few times and I just didn't like handling it in the field. Yeah. Yeah, you don't need a D750. Randy's saying he would like to get the D750, but won't. Yeah, there's no reason to get it. If you got a DF, there's nothing the D750 will do. And Roberto's tempted by, don't be tempted. Trust me, I got tempted. Roberto. You and I are so alike. I got tempted and I bought an XT30. That thing's sitting in my dry cabinet for a year now. Or, it's been sitting on my shelf for a year. I've only had the dry cabinet a couple of months. I just have no desire to take that thing out. I thought the Fujifilm simulations and all of that would make it kind of a fun camera. But when it comes down to it, I'm like, I'd rather take my Pen F out. John Allen says the Nikon FC's on his Christmas list. Yeah, that is really cool. I mean, who knows? If I go to the camera store and look at it, I might get it. But then, 2 days after I buy the ZFC, Olympus announced we have the Pen F2. And I'm like, God damn. It's like, what do I do now? Now I got a Pen F2 and a ZFC. It's like, I think that would be a problem. I did buy a new camera though. I'm going to save it. I'm going to save that for another stream because it hasn't come in yet. It should be here any day though. But I did buy a new camera. It's an Olympus camera, one that I don't have yet. So I'm going to save that till next week. No, I bought, the ZFC is a crop camera. It's an APS-C. I bought the Rugard. Marsha's asking which dry cabinet did I buy. I bought a Rugard 80 liter. But I can probably show you. I've shown it before. Let me see if I can do it without this green screen issue. I wish I could turn the green screen off. I don't know how to do it. There it is. There's my Rugard dry cabinet. It's really hard to see because of the green screen. Oh, now you're seeing my floor. This is a really cheap tripod. but it was a gift, so I cherish it like it's made of gold. Okay. See if you can see Ellie down here. Get up. Ellie, get up. Ellie, get up. She's been a little bit, whatchamacallit. She's been a little, just not herself this yesterday and today. She was a little better this morning, but yesterday she was very lethargic. And it wasn't that hot. I mean, she was indoors most of the time. So maybe she just had an upset stomach or something all day. But I mean, she still ate and everything. And today this morning she was 100%, but now she seems a little lethargic again. I'm just a little worried. Computer keeping them all warm, yes. Keeping Ellie warm. And Dave says, considering the regard as here in Oregon, it's not unusual to see 80 to 90% humidity. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the 80 liter, but it holds a lot. Man, I counted it off one day. I can't remember now. There's like a dozen cameras and dozens of lenses in that cabinet right now. What flash trigger? If you use Godox, the X Pro 2 or the X1T, either way, any of the Godox X series triggers are very good. For me, with my dying eyes, I like the X Pro better because I can see it. It has bigger print. But if you don't have that problem, any of the triggers are fine from Godox. I don't give her chocolate ice cream. She's but yeah, normally well, part of it is because the bug zapper scares her to death, so she kind of cowers away. But because when I turn off the bug zapper, I think she's a little more active. But I'll have to see. I don't know. Yeah, mention walk and she'll perk up. Yeah, walk or treats. Roberta's asked, the humidifier powered. If you're talking about the Rugard dry cabinet, yes, it has a little 5-volt power supply that goes into this piezo or whatever, some kind of weird dehumidifying thing. So it doesn't drip any water. I don't know how exactly it works. It's a very low power dehumidifier. And it's silent. It doesn't make any noise at all. The only thing is it's just a little bit warm. That's all I feel. It feels a little warm. Obviously, it has to get a little bit warm to dehumidify. But it works great. There's a new photography online video to watch. What? Forks one. Humidity is 90% right now, but only 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Wow. So, humidity is always relative, right? So if it's kind of cool, there's not as much water in the air as, say, if it's 90 degrees and 50% humidity, right? So if you reverse those numbers, 55% humidity, but it's 90 degrees, there might be actually more water in the air than what you have right now at 90% humidity and 55 degrees. I mean, I'm not a scientist, but humidity is relative. So the cooler things are, the less water the air can hold. And so that's a percentage of how much water the air can hold. Versus, at a much higher temperature, you can hold a lot more water. Hence, like steam is a good example, right? Steam is hot and you can see it because it's almost all water. But anyway, Randy says my humidity is 46% outside. Yeah, that's California for you, man. Hot but dry. And that's why I got by dew point, actual amount of water in the air dependent of, oh, okay. You go by dew point. Yeah, that makes sense. But right now my cabinet says 79.7 degrees, 37% relative humidity. So that's pretty good. And it rarely goes below 35, no matter what I set it to. But that's plenty dry. Sorry, did you I don't know what you're trying to say, Terry. Are you typing like on your phone or something? Kind of. Okay, I think I'll end it here. Yeah, yesterday was 37%. No need for a humidity cabinet. Probably not. Probably not. It's those fluctuations, though, that you have to be careful of. But okay, I'm going to go. You guys have a great rest of your weekend. I'm going to be very busy this week. Hopefully, I'll have some good results. I'll let you guys know next week how things went with all my photo jobs and using the software. I'll try and crank out some software videos as well if I can make time. You know, I'm only good for a couple of days a week of work, and then if I do more than that, you know, that's it. I wait till next week. So, any case, thanks for coming in today. I really appreciate you guys hanging out. Seeing all of you again is always awesome as usual. Let me find my off button, and we will end it there. All right, take care. See you again soon.